Hi everyone, welcome to a new Techno State video. My name is Franco, and if you ever found yourself asking what the fuck happened to Huawei, this video is for you. So, what happened is basically the US implemented two laws. One that doesn't let any foreign company install network infrastructure in their country, which until a certain point makes sense because any company that can access to the network infrastructure, 4G, 3G, all of that, has access to a lot of valuable information that they can give to their government. So for example, Huawei is a China-based company, so they could give that information that they get to their government. And everyone knows that China and the USA are not necessarily best friends. And China has been doing this already a long time ago, so it makes sense until a certain point for the US to do this. The problem is that besides this, the US doesn't let US-based companies work with Huawei. This includes Intel, Qualcomm, Microsoft, Nvidia, etc. And this is terrible for Huawei because let's talk about their phones, for example. Luckily, the SoCs in their phones are produced by themselves, so they have Kirin processors instead of Qualcomm. So at least that part won't be affected that much. But they still use Google Play services. So Android is open source, so they will be able to go on using Android, but they won't be able to use Google Play Store, YouTube, Gmail, etc. Now, the government has given them a 90-day period to go on updating as normal. So at least they will be able to soften that in a way. But after that, nobody knows what will happen. Huawei has two options for existing phones nowadays. Either they can update the operating system, but without the Google Play services after these 90 days, no? Or they can not update the operating system. None of those two options are really convenient, neither for Huawei, neither for the consumer. Yes, they will be able to release patch notes and things like that, so at least security won't be affected, but yes, features. So marketing wise, it's not really very good. Now I'm going to show you here a graph that I found that is very useful. It shows how much money they're making off of services that they're giving the people and off network, and how much money they're making around the world. Now, as you can see, Huawei used to be a network company, so they used to make a lot of money there, but slowly their consumer devices went making more money for them, and eventually now you could call it really a consumer device company because they make more money off of that than of networking devices. And that area is the one that's been more affected by the US ban, because networking, they can still install it in other countries that are not the US, but everything that has to do with the Google Play Store and all of that, they can't do it in the whole world. They won't be able to do it in Europe, in America, in Asia, nowhere, in Australia, nowhere. So as you can see here, we can see how much money they're making off in different parts of the world, and this is important to know because at least Asian people are used to using other stores that are not, for example, the Play Store. We have the Xiaomi store, Huawei has its own store, and people in Asia are used to this. So if Huawei has to give up the Play Store, it won't be so bad for Asian people. What will be bad is how Americans and how Western people are going to use this. How is Huawei going to convince these people to use their store instead of the Play Store? And this is talking about phones, no? This is going to be complicated for the phones, but their computers might directly die because they use Intel processors, they use Microsoft software, they use, if they have a graphics card, they use Nvidia for this. So their computers are basically dead. You can basically forget about their computers. Now, luckily for Huawei, they are the second biggest phone manufacturer in the world after Samsung. Apple is third. And last year alone, in 2018, they made $8.8 billion, which is really a lot, obviously. So at least they have some money with which they can help themselves to get out of this problem. But this has been a problem since before the ban. Huawei already knew about this. They already piled a big stock of products that are from the US that they're going to use until that they run out of that stock, and then we'll see what happens. they have already been working on an operating system that is capable of using Android apps, but is not specifically Android, so they already knew about this. But already before the ban, it happened that FBI, CIA, and NSA heads have said that you should not trust Huawei for your phones, and employees were not allowed to use Huawei devices, employees of these agencies. And for example, when Huawei brought its new phone to the US, it wasn't able to sell it with AT&T because AT&T, it's a carrier, no? AT&T said that it had been pressured by the government not to make negotiations with Huawei. So Huawei has to sell their phones liberated, and any person that doesn't usually buy liberated phones won't buy a Huawei phone. And now, in general, many Western people won't buy Huawei phones because they can't live without a Play Store. When this happened, the CEO had given a talk at CES, and he had to go specifically off script to say that this is a big loss for Huawei, but a bigger loss for the people. And I agree, it's a pity that people have to lose options of what they can buy because of what these governments are doing. Competition is always good. Competition puts pressure on different companies to produce better products, which in the end is good for the consumer. And losing such a big competitor, I don't think you will really lose it, but yes but no. Yes but no, we may lose Huawei as a competitor, at least in the Western society, is really a big bang for all of us. Besides, we've always been happy when companies, when phones came with pure stock Android, and now forget about that, because Huawei has never been very stock Android, Samsung was never either, and for example companies like LG were neither. But why would you want to go full stock Android when you know that you can't trust Google, not because of Google's fault, but because of the government's fault. So that is a problem also for us, definitely a minor problem, but aesthetically it's not really that nice to have Huawei's UI instead of Android's UI. Now let's go a bit more to the political side of it. First, this happened with ZTE also, and the CFO, ZTE is another brand that makes phones, but it also makes networking equipment, and this wasn't allowed anymore in the US. And the CFO of Huawei, who I think was living in Canada, was arrested, and Trump himself has said that he would let him free if he could get better trade deals of China. As you know, US and China is in a sort of trade deal war right now, in where the US is trying to get China to pay higher taxes for exporting things to the US. So with Trump having said this, it is clear that he is just doing this to threat China into giving him a better deal, a better trade deal, which is not a very mature thing to do. If you think about it, it might actually work, but it's not very mature nevertheless, and a lot of companies around the world may stop trusting in the US because they know how this worked with Huawei, so they know how it may work with them. Besides, I think my speculation is that the FBI and the CIA and the NSA had something to do with it also, because they said that you can't trust Huawei anymore, not only by networking, but also by consumer devices. Employees of these companies weren't allowed to use Huawei anymore. And apparently all of this started because, this is before the ban, no? All of this started because the creator of Huawei is an ex-People's Liberation Army soldier. And this, we know it since Huawei was created. Why is it now that these heads of these agencies are suddenly stating this? My hypothesis is that Trump had something to do with this, that he somehow got into these agencies and convinced these people to say these things, and then the government stopped AT&T from working with Huawei, and it all led to a point where where so many people didn't trust in Huawei. Well, never mind what I was trying to say before. What are the possible outcomes for Huawei? Either one of two. Since I said this is just, for me, just a political thing between Trump and China, and Xi Jinping, I think it was called. And if Trump gets what he wants, he might lift the ban, and just like if nothing happened, Huawei might go on doing business, although it still leaves a precedent for how companies should work with the US. Or what can happen is that this is never lifted and the Huawei has to start living with this, in which case it won't be able to produce computers anymore. And more or less, if I'll show you the graph again, more or less my estimations are that at 32%, how much is it? I think 32%. I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm just guessing. I think 32% of what they make will be lost in the next years, because nobody in the Western market will want to buy Huawei phones if you know that you are risking not having operating system updates and not having the Google Play services. In Asia, I think this won't be so bad by what I said before, but they will lose a big part of their money, and this is only consumer devices, in the Western market, without taking into account networking all over the world, although this is more than anything a problem in the US. So that's it. There's not much more I can say about it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll leave sources down below. Any source that I refer to is down below in the description, as is the like button. So if you want to like, you can always go there. You can subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you won't miss any future videos. You can leave a comment down below if there's any question that you have or anything, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.